Minerals that are extracted get refined, get processed into consumer products at the sources.
Well, first of all, for that to happen, you have to have energy. Now check how many countries actually have energy. And who gives energy?
Have you heard that Sierra Leone has decided to join Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso in building nuclear power plants by collaborating with Russia? But why is it so important? Well, the First Lady of Sierra Leone explained it very well. Why don't African countries just use the raw materials and natural resources they have to make consumable products? Why do they just export the raw materials at cheap prices and import expensive products made from those raw materials from the West? Well, that's a question that has remained in Africa since the colonizers left, at least at the surface level. The answer is that African countries have been deprived of energy that can be used to run industries that will produce consumable products. But now, as Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso did, Sierra Leone has decided to do the same and turn to Russia. Nuclear power plants will be constructed to provide energy to industries. Yet, what are the grand plans that have created shockwaves? Let's know about that in this video. So, what has Sierra Leone done under the surface that has caused shockwaves? Well, the simple answer is that Russia is getting into the roots of Africa, offering benefits that the West could not offer despite staying for centuries. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov recently announced plans for potential collaboration between Moscow and Sierra Leone in the field of peaceful nuclear energy. And when discussions are centered on nuclear energy, it means things are quite serious. This includes discussions about possibly constructing a nuclear power plant within Sierra Leone. Lavrov unveiled these plans during a press conference in Moscow, held after his meeting with Sierra Leone's counterpart, Timothy Musa Kaba. During the conference, Lavrov mentioned that further talks would be conducted to explore additional investment opportunities for Russian investors in various sectors. He particularly highlighted the potential for collaboration in nuclear energy, extending beyond just the energy sector itself. And that's quite concerning for the West. Going beyond the energy sector when regarding nuclear energy means nuclear weapons, something the West cannot tolerate, but it has to this time. Additionally, Lavrov disclosed intentions to reopen the Russian embassy in Sierra Leone by the end of the year. He stressed that all necessary arrangements had been finalized, demonstrating a commitment to strengthening diplomatic relations between the two nations. Kaba, Sierra Leone's foreign minister, echoed Lavrov's sentiments, emphasizing the significance of reopening the embassy after 32 years. He emphasized the potential for enhancing trust between Russian and Sierra Leonean businesses, anticipating positive outcomes for bilateral relations. You should know that several West African nations, Sierra Leone included, have entered into agreements with Russia's Rosatom State Corporation to explore the possibility of constructing nuclear power plants. Sierra Leone aims to develop additional proposals for Russian investors, particularly in the nuclear power engineering sector and other non-energy applications of nuclear power, requiring further interdepartmental examination. Discussions between Lavrov and Kaba also encompassed broader issues related to sustainable development and multifaceted Russia-Africa cooperation. With Sierra Leone's strategic coastal position, Russia's interest in bolstering its access to the Atlantic Ocean is evident. Sierra Leone is increasingly regarded as a dependable partner for Russia in Africa, with both nations collaborating in international forums to advocate for justice and democracy on the global stage. But why is all that making the West nervous? Well, whenever someone talks about Russia in front of the West starts sweating, and for good reason. The whole of the West collectively does not even come close to Russia when the question is about power and influence. Even if Russia was competing with the West in various parts of the world, Africa was the continent where the West held all influence. But now, it has changed completely. In the midst of escalating talks about potential nuclear sanctions targeting Russia, the state-owned energy company Rosatom is actively exploring fresh opportunities in Africa. At the recent African Energy Indaba in Cape Town, Ryan Collier, Rosatom's chief executive for Central and Southern Africa, urged South Africa to move forward with its nuclear program, emphasizing the importance of ensuring stable, affordable, and environmentally friendly power. This call found resonance with South Africa's Energy Minister Gwede Mantashe, who stressed the pivotal role of nuclear energy in alleviating the country's persistent electricity shortages. Despite nuclear power currently constituting approximately 10% of global electricity generation, Africa boasts only one nuclear power station, the Coburg plant in Cape Town. Nevertheless, several African nations, including Uganda, Rwanda, Kenya, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, have recently unveiled plans to develop nuclear power facilities. Capitalizing on potential economic opportunities amid Western sanctions, Russia has pledged its backing to African countries with aspirations for nuclear energy. This becomes a win-win opportunity for Africa and Russia.
There is no time like now, because for Sierra Leone, we now have a president who believes that we cannot wait for other people to come and develop us. We cannot wait for another country to come and prescribe how our country should be run or what we need in our country. You know, this divide and rule, if you're close to China, we will not come to your country. If you're close to America, we will not come to your country. I mean, the fight that is between England, Europe, America, China, Russia is not a Sierra Leone fight. That's not our problem. We're fighting for our daily bread. We're looking to have education, just like America. We're looking to have good health facility, just like Europe.
That's exactly what Russia wants as well. It's quite surprising that the interests of Russia align with that of Africa on this matter. Russia does not want Africa to choose anyone or become part of its fight. It simply wants Africa to recognize who is beneficial for it and who is exploiting it. As of now, Sierra Leone needs energy that it can use to uplift its economy through industrialization. It's because industries run on energy. However, the biggest energy providers in Sierra Leone are Western, who fully exploit the situation and do not offer sufficient energy for industries. Listen to what the First Lady of Sierra Leone said.
Our electricity, Bumuna, is run by the British, and we still don't have light. We're looking for light. Electricity. If you don't have electricity, how can you talk about education? How can you talk about health facility? How can you talk about improving the infrastructure of your country? We don't have electricity. Now, do we actually even have proper water, pipe-borne water, so that our kids will not be sick? We don't have those facilities. Why? With all the minerals we have, there is a cap you put. Before my husband became the president of Sierra Leone was benefiting, they said, what's the word? 0.000.1%. What is that?
That's when Russia comes. Viewing Africa as a lucrative market for nuclear technology, Rosatom's Director General, Alexei Likachev, affirmed this stance during a session in Russia's parliament. Rosatom has recently reaffirmed its commitment to African nuclear energy ventures by formalizing cooperation agreements with Mali, Burkina Faso, and Algeria during the Atomexpo Energy Conference held in Sochi. These agreements build upon earlier commitments, including the announcement in October regarding Rosatom's initiative to construct a nuclear power station in Burkina Faso. Additionally, construction has commenced on the fourth reactor at the El Dabaa nuclear power plant in Egypt, recognized as one of the world's largest nuclear construction endeavors. By doing so, what Russia is doing is to make African countries independent in production, and in return, it benefits Russia. Amid increasing pressure to sanction Rosatom over Putin's actions in Ukraine, Russia is aggressively expanding its footprint in African markets. Belgian Prime Minister Alexander De Croo has recently urged the EU to swiftly reduce its dependence on Russian nuclear fuel to avoid inadvertently funding Putin's military endeavors further. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. But why is Sierra Leone suddenly shifting toward Russia and joining Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso? Well, the First Lady of Sierra Leone, Fatima Mata Bio, answered that quite well.
When you look at what Sierra Leone have to offer, when it comes to our mineral resources, the kind of mineral resources we have in our country is enough to take care of everybody in that country. We should not have a single poor person in Sierra Leone. But unfortunately, we are not given the free will to make decisions on our own mineral resources. There's always Big Brother who decides. And when you fight and say, no, we are not going to do this, they use the system to stop you. It's either they set you up with the opposition and they'll be supporting the opposition against you from the back, or they cause unnecessary chaos in your country so that you are not able to even govern your own people.
Sierra Leone, a small West African nation with around 8 million people, is blessed with abundant natural resources like diamonds, gold, iron ore, and bauxite, which hold immense economic potential. However, reality paints a different picture. Despite its natural wealth, Sierra Leone has struggled to turn its resources into tangible benefits for its people. One major hurdle is the lack of control over its own resources. Decisions about how to use and manage these resources are often made by outside forces, leaving Sierra Leoneans with little say in their own future. This lack of control has serious implications for the country's development path. The idea of a big brother figure is significant in Sierra Leone's resource management. This refers to powerful external interests that influence the country's affairs, often to the detriment of its citizens. Whether through economic pressure, political manipulation, or covert actions, these outside forces shape the narrative and dictate the terms, leaving little room for true self-determination. When Sierra Leone tries to assert its sovereignty or challenge the status quo, it faces resistance. External actors use various tactics to maintain their hold on the country's resources and stifle change. This could include supporting opposition groups, causing unrest, or using economic leverage to ensure compliance. These actions undermine Sierra Leone's ability to govern itself and pursue its own development goals. The consequences of this imbalance are profound and wide-ranging. It perpetuates a cycle of underdevelopment and dependence, leaving most Sierra Leoneans marginalized and impoverished. Despite its mineral wealth, basic services like electricity, clean water, and healthcare remain out of reach for many. This lack of infrastructure not only hinders human development, but also stifles economic growth and opportunity. Foreign ownership of Sierra Leone's mining sector exacerbates the problem. As Fatima notes, every mining company in the country is owned by foreigners. This means that much of the profits from Sierra Leone's resources leave the country, leaving little behind for local communities. This results in Sierra Leoneans seeing minimal benefit from the exploitation of their own resources.
Basically, a company can take as much as $100 million out of the country in terms of minerals, and then they can just give the country $10,000. Now, what will $10,000 do for our health system? What is $10,000 do for our educational system? And these are the things I believe that are stopping Africa from progressing. We don't have a say. The sense about us celebrating independence, I don't know why we celebrate independence, because we are not free. That is my own take. I'm not speaking also on behalf of the government of Sierra Leone, nor am I speaking on behalf of His Excellency the President. I am speaking as Fatima, as a citizen of a country who believes that things need to change.
In the face of these challenges, Russia's offer of infrastructure development provides a potential alternative for Sierra Leone. Unlike traditional Western partners, Russia emphasizes cooperation rather than exploitation. This offer holds the promise of unlocking Sierra Leone's economic potential and reducing its dependence on foreign aid. But what next is brewing that will literally close all doors for the West in Africa? Throughout history, Western powers have wielded considerable influence over Africa's abundant resources, often exploiting them for their own gain. This exploitation was made possible through collaboration with leaders who were ostensibly elected democratically, but frequently owed their positions to support from Western governments. Despite claiming to represent their people, these leaders often prioritize the interests of their Western benefactors, enabling the continued exploitation of Africa's natural riches. However, there were instances when African leaders emerged who dared to challenge Western supremacy. Figures like Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso and Muammar Gaddafi of Libya epitomized such departures from the norm. These leaders pursued policies aimed at fostering African self-sufficiency, economic autonomy, and unity, directly challenging Western interests. Thomas Sankara, renowned for his radical approach, spearheaded efforts to overhaul Burkina Faso's economy and society. He implemented measures aimed at reducing reliance on foreign aid and promoting self-reliance, boldly confronting imperialism and advocating for an Africa free from external control. Similarly, Muammar Gaddafi's leadership in Libya posed a direct challenge to Western hegemony, advocating for Pan-African unity and economic self-reliance, particularly in oil resources. In response to figures like Sankara and Gaddafi, Western powers deployed various tactics to undermine and topple them from power. These tactics ranged from covert support for opposition factions to economic sanctions and, in some cases, direct military intervention. These actions were aimed at safeguarding Western interests and perpetuating control over Africa's resources. Fast forward to the present day, and Africa's geopolitical landscape is undergoing transformation. While some nations are currently ruled by military regimes, others, like Sierra Leone, boast democratically elected leadership. Despite its democratic credentials, Sierra Leone's recent pivot towards Russia and distancing from the West has sparked concern among Western powers. Sierra Leone's strategic reorientation represents a direct challenge to Western dominance. The allure of Russian investment and collaboration, particularly in infrastructure development and resource extraction, offers an alternative to reliance on Western assistance. This shift introduces a new dimension to African geopolitics, potentially eroding Western influence in the region. Western powers fear that Sierra Leone's example could inspire other African nations to follow suit. If more countries opt for partnerships with Russia, it could diminish Western control over Africa's resources. Russian engagement emphasizes mutual benefit and respect for sovereignty, in contrast to the paternalistic approach often associated with the West. Already, experienced policymakers in the United States are increasingly recognizing that Western dominance in Africa is on the decline. As the Western world grapples with multiple global conflicts and internal challenges, a gap has inadvertently opened up, allowing other major players like China and Russia to expand their influence on the African continent. This shifting dynamic is already underway and is reshaping Africa's geopolitical landscape. China and Russia are seizing the opportunity presented by the distractions in the West to deepen their involvement with Africa. Unlike the West, which has often pursued its interests on the continent through exploitative methods, China and Russia are offering a different approach based on genuine mutual cooperation. They acknowledge Africa's vast potential and understand that establishing fair and equitable partnerships can yield significant economic, strategic, and political advantages for all parties involved. At the core of China and Russia's appeal is their readiness to engage with Africa on its own terms. They recognize Africa's abundant natural resources and substantial economic opportunities, committing to fostering development that truly benefits African nations rather than solely serving their own interests. By adhering to principles of mutual respect, non-interference, and win-win cooperation, China and Russia are gaining the confidence and collaboration of African governments and populations alike. Furthermore, China and Russia are positioning themselves as viable alternatives to the exploitative practices historically employed by the West in Africa. They acknowledge that Africa does not need to be unfairly exploited for mutual gain. Instead, by adhering to transparent and mutually beneficial agreements, they believe they can unleash Africa's potential while also advancing their own economic, strategic, and political goals. These partnerships with China and Russia offer Africa significant opportunities for growth and development. They provide access to critical investment, technology transfer, and infrastructure development, all of which are essential for fostering sustainable progress across the continent. Additionally, by broadening their international partnerships, African nations can lessen their dependence on the West and assert greater control over their futures. For seasoned policymakers in the United States, this shift in paradigm presents both challenges and opportunities. It requires a reassessment of traditional approaches to Africa and an acknowledgement of the evolving geopolitical terrain. While the West may no longer wield the same level of influence it once did, there is still room for constructive engagement and collaboration with African nations based on shared values and interests. Now, as Sierra Leone has moved closer to Russia and is ready to allow Russia to set up its embassy and nuclear power plants, the message is clear for the West. It's just a matter of time before democratically elected presidents, like Julius Maada Bio, shift their policy and realize they don't need the West to stay in power. Seeing countries like Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, they can learn that working for the welfare of their public is the only way they can have permanent support. In that way, they don't have to sell their loyalty and the country's natural resources. Instead, doing what they are supposed to do will be enough. Already, sentiments exist in all of Africa that if African leaders do not change and continue to be West's puppets, they will be overthrown by military leaders. Therefore, they have two options. Either they can work for the welfare of their country or be replaced by someone who will do the job. What do you think? Can Russia be a reliable partner for Africa to get locally generated energy to run industries? Is it true that African countries can start to have positive changes if the energy problem is solved, or will they need bold leaders as well? In the comment section right below, share your thoughts on whether more African countries will do what Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger are doing. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.